Good morning, everyone. I feel joy. We have some major breaking news, and that relates to Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I think that you may have heard it already, but Senator Chris Von Hollen went to El Salvador on Tuesday and demanded to see him. And as you know, the initial reaction of the president of El Salvador was to ignore him. But then the vice president told him, we cannot set Mr. Albrego Garcia free, despite the fact that it was a mistake that the US sent him here. They told him no because the US was paying them. Well, there was some major breaking news yesterday evening, and I want to share with you the photo. Here it is. This is from the site, from the Blue Sky site of Senator Chris Van Hollen. And here is what he said. And let me just tell you what's in the photo. On the left is Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He's wearing a baseball cap, presumably to cover up his shaved head. He's wearing a striped shirt. They're sitting at a table. There's some glasses of water and cups of coffee. And Senator Chris Van Hollen is leaning in and looking into his eyes. They're looking at each other. And here's what he wrote. I said my main goal of this trip was to meet with Kilmar. Tonight, I have had that chance. I have called his wife, Jennifer, to pass along his message of love. I look forward to providing a full update upon my return. This is huge. This is huge. We know so much now. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is alive. Someone in the chat is saying he's wearing what he had on when he was abducted, so they heard. So I guess they kept the clothing and they didn't buy him new clothes. That was what he had been wearing. And this is huge. This is huge for a number of reasons. First, we know he is alive. Second, we know that there's nothing stopping the government of El Salvador from releasing him. For God's sake, they could have handed him over right then if they had wanted to. If the US government, if Donald Trump knew Senator Van Hollen was there. There's no reason that he couldn't get on the phone and say to the president of El Salvador, Bukele, let him get on a plane with Van Hollen. That would save us a fuck ton of money, you guys. They don't even have to send a plane down to get him. This shows you that they've done nothing to facilitate his return, which is going to bring me to the story of the day, which is that the Fourth Circuit told Donald Trump's administration, told Kristi Noem and team, no, we are not going to slap back the judge in this case. And specifically, the judge is Judge Zini. And the bottom line is the three judges in the Fourth Circuit said to the Trump administration, there's an order in place from the federal court in Maryland, and she has said there's expedited discovery to find out whether you're in contempt of court because you are not facilitating the release of Mr. Abrego Garcia. That Donald Trump had run into court to try to get the Fourth Circuit to scold, the judge, to force her to overturn that order. Nope. The Fourth Circuit said nope. And they also said, can we at least get a stay so we can, while we're appealing this decision, while we drag that out, can we at least not comply with this discovery? Nope. So that is what happened. Now, before I get to that, I'm going to point out to you something terrible that President Bukele did. He knew that Van Hollen was taking photos. So what did he do? He had someone on his team slip into the photo. You saw the photo. It was glasses of ice water and coffee. Slip into the photo, glasses with sugar rims and cherries in them to make it look like they were kicking back and drinking margaritas. And then he put that on his own Twitter site. So let's look at this. You can see it here. Bukele says, Kilmar Abrego Garcia miraculously risen from the death camps and torture, he puts those in quotes, now sipping margaritas with Senator Van Hollen in the tropical paradise of El Salvador. And he thinks, you see the staffer at the table who slipped those in there. It was either him or someone else. That's what we've heard. Now, Aaron Recklin Melnick, who is an immigration expert, wrote, Bukele just posted this on X, also known as Twitter, suggesting he arranged a meeting between Kilmar Abrego Garcia and Chris Van Hollen. He then used it to mock his critics for expressing concern about Mr. Abrego. What an utter pig. This isn't going to help him. Now, I want to add now, again, the breaking news in this case. And I need to walk you through what is possibly the most gorgeous judicial decision I have seen in my life. Not showing you the whole thing, but I'm going to read you the excerpt so you know what's going on. And this is the decision yesterday from the Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. This is the Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia and his wife and his son, 3-year-old son, because remember that he's a father of 3, but the 2 are, he is a stepfather to her previous children. And this is a case from Abrego Garcia against Kristi Noem, and others on that list include Pam Bondi and Marco Rubio. And what is happening here is that this is the order that I mentioned yesterday from Judge Wilkinson and King and Thacker. So when you have an appeal to a circuit court, there are 3 judges on the panel. The lead judge here was Wilkinson. Wilkinson, just so you should know, was appointed to the bench in the 80s by Ronald Reagan. He is the son of a banker, went to private schools, was conservative in college, and kept that ideology throughout his life. He was on the short list when William Rehnquist was sick. He was on a short list for President Bush to possibly appoint him. That I think was in 2004. Okay, so now, also you should know that his daughter, Judge Wilkinson's daughter, the one who wrote this decision, clerked for John Roberts. Okay, so let me share with you the key things here. One of the most important things you can see in this cover photo is this excerpt. And so I'm going to go right to that one. It says, let me go right to this. I want to go to this. It is difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter. But in this case, it is not hard at all. The judge continues. The government is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process. That is the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, it claims, in essence, that because it has rid itself of custody, that there is nothing that can be done. This should be shocking, not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from courthouses still hold dear. Now, sorry, I've got more on these slides, and I want to share this with you. Okay, so the bottom line, let me just add also to you this for you. The bottom line, upon review of the government's motion, the court denies a motion for an emergency stay pending appeal and for a writ of mandamus. The relief the government is requesting is both extraordinary and premature. While we fully respect the executive's robust assertion of its Article 2 powers, we shall not micromanage the efforts of a fine district judge attempting to implement the Supreme Court's recent decision. Okay, what's the bottom line here? This is what is going on here is something called a habeas petition. And I know that you have seen these words, habeas corpus, Habeas And some of us throw this around. I think that to describe this, I think the best way is it means to have or to present the body. So that when you file a petition for habeas corpus, if you, or in this case, he did with his wife and his son, you're asking to be able to come before a judge and question why it is that you are in custody. So Abrego Garcia, when he went to initially to the judge in Maryland, he was asking, that judge to allow him to be able to come home. So what it is kind of like, this is kind of astonishing. This is a remedy that is normally pretty basic. What's astonishing in this case is that the man who is filing this petition for habeas corpus is not in the US, right? Usually you would file it if he were in prison in Maryland. And this could happen even in the instance where it didn't relate at all to immigration. So that is the case, the initial case that he brought. Where it stands now is, you might remember, this is the case where the Trump administration, instead of saying, our bad, we'll let him go, they said, our bad, we made a mistake, but we wash our hands of it. We can't let this man out of prison because he's in El Salvador and we have no jurisdiction there, essentially. What's going on now in this case is that there was an order the judge had made. This is the Maryland judge saying that the Trump administration, namely Kristi Noem, Pam Bondi, and the others named, needed to facilitate and effectuate his release. This went up to the United States Supreme Court, and the court said 9-0, we agree about the part about facilitating his release, that yes, the Trump administration needs to facilitate the release. But they said, we're not sure what effectuate means, but we don't want effectuate to mean something that would step on the toes of the executive power of a president to conduct foreign policy. Okay. So the Supreme Court, though, also, and this is critical, made clear that facilitate was more than just not getting in the way of his release should the president of El Salvador want to release him, right? In fact, in the Fourth Circuit, they said, and I just want to read this to you, this is Judge Wilkinson and the other two who joined him. The Supreme Court's decision does not, however, allow the government to do essentially nothing. It requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from the custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. And they're quoting the court. And then the judge goes on. It requires that steps be taken as the Supreme Court has made perfectly clear. And then they quote again, the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospects of further steps. The Trump administration has refused in front of the judge in Maryland, who's asked for daily updates ever since the Supreme Court decision. She's asked for daily updates, and now they're stonewalling her, saying we have no new updates. So bottom line I'm bringing, why this is such a huge victory, why this is a legal smackdown on Donald Trump, is a extremely respected old line conservative judge, joined by two of his colleagues, has written a decision that says, no, we will not stop the judge in Maryland. And yes, hinting toward the fact that it fucking looks like you people are in contempt of court. What's critical about this decision is that this appears to be written both for the ears of any lawyers who care about justice that work for Trump, not many, if any anymore, but it also appears to be written for a Supreme Court audience. And it is astonishingly beautiful. If my favorite page, I would say, is page 6. And I do want to share this part of the screen with you because there is, I don't think I can actually share this with you because I don't have this pulled up in the same tab, but let me just tell you, let me read this to you because this is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now the branches come too close to grinding irrevocably against one another in a conflict that diminishes both. The branches he's referring to are the executive and the judicial. This is a losing proposition all around. The judiciary will lose much from the constant intimations of its illegitimacy, to which by dint of custom and attachment, we can only sparingly reply. The executive will lose much from a public perception of its lawlessness and all of its attendant contagions. The executive may succeed for a time in weakening the courts, but over time, history will script the tragic gap between what was and all that might have been. And law, in time, will sign its epitaph. And then the final paragraph here. It is, as we have noted, all too possible to see in this incipient crisis, to see in this case an incipient crisis, but it may present an opportunity as well. We yet cling to the hope that it is not naive to believe our good brethren in the executive branch perceive the rule of law as vital to the American ethos. This case presents their unique chance to vindicate that value and to summon the best that is within us while there is still time. In sum, and for the reasons foregoing, we deny the motion for the stay pending appeal and the writ of mandamus. In this case, it is so ordered. Okay. It is, I don't want to say it's naive, but I want to say it's eloquent and it's written for the history books. And yet, as much as I celebrate that, I want to be 100% clear to you. As happy as I am, we are still, and the only hope is, I believe, hitting the streets as hard as we can on Saturday. Everywhere across the country, there are protests. You can find one, and I'm going to now actually share my screen to show you the protest list. And no, my friends, I did not make this list. That would be something I would not have time to do in my spare time. And I'm putting the link in the chat. What I'm showing to you here with this protest list is, and I'm scrolling, like, for example, I don't know where you are, but let's say you are in the state of Wisconsin. Let's look at that. Oh, let's just even look at Kentucky. If you live in Lexington, Kentucky, you can go to the No Kings rally. Some are called No Kings, some are called Stand Up, some are called WWJF, about Kilmar. Others are Patriots Day, Day of Action, hands off. So I'm now going to, if you live in Lexington, Kentucky, from 2 to 5 p.m. Their time, you would be going to the Robert Stevens Courthouse. Now, I didn't actually click over to that site, but you get the idea. You can find something. In Michigan, since I want to go there, if I'm in Detroit, I can go to the hands-off protest. Here we go. I'm showing this tab. So here's where I'm going to go. I love this graphic. I can go to this hands-off protest at noon in Hart Plaza. Hands off, Detroit. Stand up against Trump's attack. Show Trump that we will not sit idly by while he strips away our rights. There is a protest for you. Find one. These are rallies. These are huge, and they're going to keep happening. And when I say to you, this is the only hope, I think what gave me strength yesterday, yesterday's show, I began it by saying it's on the Republicans. They need to step up. Well, guess what? Pressure is on them. And I am shocked to tell you that David Brooks, the center-right columnist for the New York Times, and William Crystal, the former kind of far-ish right Republican conservative who's kind of moved more to the center, the two of them have gone full Karl Marx. I'm not fucking kidding you. Let's show you this. So the first thing I'm going to show you is David Brooks put up this piece in the New York Times. What's happening is not normal. Americans need an uprising that is not normal. And I want to share with you in the live chat for this piece a gift link so that you can read it if you are not a subscriber. And this is what I would call, I don't know, what I said on Blue Sky about this is welcome, welcome to the resistance, David Brooks. I'm hoping that I can share with you. Um, yeah, I think I'm sharing this gift article. So give me a second. I'm dropping it in the chat right now for you. Okay. So what is happening is not normal. America needs an uprising that is not normal. Now, this is the final paragraph. Spoiler alert. This is David Brooks, conservative columnist in the New York Times. I'm really, and you probably have seen him like on PBS NewsHour if that's your jam. I'm really not a movement guy. I don't naturally march in demonstrations or attend rallies that I'm not covering as a journalist. But this is what America needs right now. Trump is shackling the greatest institutions in American life. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Huh. If that we have nothing to lose but our change rings a bell, shall I share this with you? This is a middle-aged, not a young, not an old Karl Marx posed in a photo, looking a little debonair. And here is what he had written in 1848. Workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. Now, it's not every day that or any day that I quote Karl Marx, but it's certainly a shock to see David Brooks himself do that. So let's read a little more about this piece. This is gorgeous writing. Let me read. Okay. Um, in the beginning, there was agony under the empires of old. The strong did what they willed, and the weak suffered what they must. But over the centuries, people built the sinews of civilization, constitutions to restrain power, international alliances to promote peace, legal systems to peacefully settle disputes, scientific institutions to cure disease, news outlets to advance public understanding, charitable organizations to ease suffering, businesses to build wealth and spread prosperity, and universities to preserve, transmit, and advance the glories of our way of life. These institutions make our lives sweet, loving, and creative rather than nasty, brutish, and short. Okay. In other words, a civic uprising has to have a short-term vision and a long-term vision. Short-term, stop Trump, foil his efforts, pile on the lawsuits, turn some of his followers against him. The second is a long-term vision of a fairer society that is not just hard on Trump, but hard on the causes of Trumpism. One that offers a positive vision, whether it's the universities, the immigration system, or the global economy. We can't go back to the status quo that prevailed when Trump first rode down the escalator. And then again, Trump is shackling the greatest institutions in American life. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Which brings me now, again, to Marx. Now, the other shocking news related to this is Bill Kristol. Bill Kristol wants to abolish ICE. Here's what he wrote a piece for the Bulwark, but I'm reading a quote from it. from his Blue Sky account. He said, where does the abolish ICE movement go to get its apology? Holy shit. This is where we are. We need to rally like there is no tomorrow. And I agree, these movements will build, and eventually we might get to a general strike or something of that effect. And it's important for me to point out to you, this is hugely critical, that it is now happening to, when I made my it, people said, oh, would this ever happen with US citizens? Would someone ever, would someone abduct off the street a US citizen? Would ICE, not someone? And the answer, my friends, is yes. While we are focusing on Kilmar Abrego Garcia, there was something else happening in Florida. And Florida has a law which has now been somewhat suspended. And Florida has a law that had allowed and it's still in effect. Florida troopers, if they see someone coming across the Florida lines, let's say driving down from Georgia, and they turn out to be undocumented, that they can call ICE and put them into a regular prison or a regular jail in Florida until ICE releases them. We had that situation this week. A US born citizen, this is, I'm reading you from an article yesterday. A US born American citizen was being detained at the request of immigration authorities Thursday, that was yesterday, despite an advocate showing his US birth certificate in court and a county judge finding no reason for him to be considered an illegal alien who illegally entered Florida. Juan Carlos Gomez Lopez, age 20, was arrested Thursday evening by Florida Highway Patrol and charged under a state immigration law that has been temporarily blocked since early this month. Details of Gomez Lopez's arrest and detention were first reported by the Florida Phoenix website. Guys, this happened yesterday, and I saw it on Blue Sky, but I was like, this can't be true. He is an American citizen. They went into court, an advocate waived his birth certificate, handed it to the judge. The judge held it up to the light and saw the actual seal, the watermark, and said, yeah, he's a US citizen. He shouldn't be held, but she had no authority to release him because of ICE. This is why we do need to abolish ICE. Well, I want to show you some good news. Thank God there was media attention about this, because mother and son were united yesterday. I need to play this for you. They drove him to a Wendy's, and this is her hugging him. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little emotional here. This is happening. Doesn't matter that Senator Von Hollen got to see Abrego Garcia. We have Americans being put into ICE custody. We also have people with green cards and student visas being threatened, being whisked off the street without due process. We have students in universities terrified. I have my own students coming up to me, of course, I'm not going to name, who are afraid. They came to America to study and thought this country was something different than what they are finding out we are. Now, I want to say this last thing about Von Hollen. He is channeling his inner Frederick Douglass, and so are we. We need to know power conceives nothing without a demand, never did, and it never will. We need to demand that all of our senators and representatives stand up, specifically the Republicans who actually they own this. They own everything the Trump administration does. We need to make those demands. And what he did is he used his own power to make a demand of higher powers, and he got what he was looking for. We all need to find our inner Frederick Douglass and our inner Chris Von Hollen. We have more power than we think, and we should use it in the ways that we absolutely can. Now, I have got a piece that's new, which is Snark of the Day. Here I go. Kyle Griffin about Josh Shapiro. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro says he hasn't heard from Trump since the arson incident at the governor's mansion. Andrew Weinstein replies, that's because the governor is a Jewish Democrat and not a Tesla. Ooh, dark humor, but I kind of love it. Okay, it is time for a quick crazy town before we leave each other. I have to make it a short show because I have an 8:30 appointment. I am late for on Zoom, but here we go. Okay, I hate showing Donald Trump, but this is the height of idiocy. You may know that apparently the US government is arranging with the Democratic Republic of the Congo to get rare earth minerals, and they're entering into some kind of deal. So that is happening on the sidelines. I say this to you because in a separate press conference at the Oval Office complaining about immigrants, Donald Trump mentions the Congo and says he doesn't even know what it is. I should point out to you that the Democratic Republic of the Congo has over 100 and I think it's 12 million citizens. 112 million people live in the Congo. 112 million. He's got someone negotiating a major minerals deal with the country. 3 times as many inhabitants than Canada. This is what the idiot president had to say.
We're horrible. They released jails, Georgia, from all over the world. They released them, not just South America, all over the world, the Congo and Africa. Many, many people come from the Congo. I don't know what that is, but they came from the Congo.
That's what I got for you. And now, thank you for joining me. And I will see you on Monday. Go to a rally, report back. I can't wait to take photos and report back from the Detroit rally on Monday. Love you guys.